I've always felt like right-wing political commentators and people in the MAGA media have a little kink, or they really love being humiliated or mocked or having their talking points shredded to their face. And some evidence for that theory can be seen in Brian Tyler Cohen, friend of the show, his takedown of MAGA influencer Benny Johnson on a whole host of issues on Piers Morgan's show. Brian is someone I would never want to go up against in a debate. Thankfully, we would be on the same side, but that wasn't the case for Benny. And so he was just humiliated and shut up. And we're going to get into all of it. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video. And if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, we got a couple of topics that Brian just absolutely shut Benny down on. The first one, of course, the biggest topic of this week, Pete Hegseth's Signalgate scandal.
So it's a massive conspiracy theory, and he was deliberately added to this group for some nefarious reason, is the new theory from Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's all just, I mean, it's bullshit. Like Benny is just flailing because he can't accept reality right now, and he knows full well that if the tables were turned, he would be going on a scorched earth tirade about how all of these people should resign or worse, be prosecuted or criminally. I mean, like, what are we even doing here? Are you that much of a partisan hack that you can't just acknowledge? The problem is this administration is so incapable of taking the L that they would rather just entrench and prolong these problems even more.
Which I think is I think that's a good point, because Trump, that comes from Trump. Trump is on, Trump's told me, you never ever admit you lose at anything. You just barrel down.
It's the Roy Cohn School of it's the Roy Cohn School of Management.
Yeah.
It's that these guys they're so focused on ego, so focused on protecting their own asses, that instead of just being able to like take the L, which by the way, people would respect a hell of a lot more than Pete Hegseth coming out and saying, I did not discuss any war plans, only for Jeffrey Goldberg to release the very next day a detailed account of exactly the war plans that he was releasing.
Yeah. I mean, look. I know Pete. I like Pete.
Even the Atlantic has changed their words
and
changed their story here.
Let's
the Atlantic says, "Oh, now it's an attack. It's an attack plan. It's not a war plan."
Well, what would you call this?
What would you
call this? But they cannot think of anything that could be more highly classified than to actually be discussing war plans for an imminent attack on foreign soil involving American military. To me, it's indisputably highly classified. Otherwise, what else is?
Especially in front of a journalist that hates you. Especially in front of a journalist that hates you. I hope that they find the person that added Jeffrey Goldberg and then that they fire him.
It was Mike Wolf.
I just think I can't imagine a stupider. I can't imagine a worse thing to do. I'm not going to defend that.
Okay.
Everyone knows that.
All right.
It's a mistake. That's a terrible mistake.
But we know who it was. But Brian, let me bring in Brian. We know from the screen grab. It says added by Mike Waltz. And by the way, Mike Waltz clarified last night on Laura Ingraham, it wasn't a staffer. Brian, your final word on this, then we're going to change topic.
Look, again, I just want to dig into one misnomer that Benny is putting forward, this idea that it wasn't classified and so it's okay. This is some clever little trick that Republicans and Trump are trying to do. Trump is the ultimate classification authority. So he thinks that if he can just come forward and say, well, I'm declassifying it, then that will absolve everybody in retrospect. But they know full well that this kind of material, when you are talking about an imminent attack prior to it happening, notwithstanding the fact that Jeffrey Goldberg was there, notwithstanding the fact that it's on an unsecured app, but of course, by nature, this stuff is classified. And again, if Benny didn't have his head so far up the Republican Party's ass, he would be able to recognize that if somebody with a D next to their name was doing the exact same thing.
Well, to be fair to Benny,
I'm not really.
To be fair to Benny, he said it was a big mistake. He said that there should be accountability. He's not tried to shirk away from that. He simply questioned whether we are the right arbiters for what is classified information. It's a reasonable point. The question will be, will there be a proper investigation to get to the bottom of it? I think it's indisputable. But
let me try something. Piers, please let me respond to that. Yes?
Sure.
Okay. So, Brian, you're not in charge of what's classified and what's not. Now, I'm perfectly happy to let all that play out. Let's fine. Do an investigation. Figure out what's classified and what's not. We know that Hillary Clinton had classified information on a private server and that she destroyed it. We know that. That's confirmed.
You're not even capable of not talking about Hillary Clinton, are you?
Okay, fine. Let's fast forward. Joe Biden, we know that he had classified information next to his Corvette.
Are you able to recognize the issue right in front of us instead of talking about previous Democratic presidents?
The question. Is it wrong? Is it wrong for Hillary and Joe to do it?
Is it wrong for them to be reckless with classified information? Absolutely.
Yeah, we go.
It's not that hard.
Okay.
It's not that hard to take accountability for when somebody fucks up on your own side.
I'm so glad Brian just came out and said exactly what is the case. This is complete hackery. If Pete Hegseth was a Democrat, if Pete Hegseth was Hillary Clinton, if Pete Hegseth was a black woman, Republicans, including Pete Hegseth, would be losing their mind. They'd never stop talking about it. They would say that this person should be jailed. And you know what? They would be right. If any other person did this, they would be held accountable. Pete Hegseth should be held accountable. This is a massive breach of our national security and is just idiocy at the highest level. And Brian did not stop there, calling out the idiocy and unlawful actions and immoral actions of this administration. He also ripped Benny to shreds on Donald Trump's mass deportation plan. This clip right here.
Crisis, which is what it was, under control. This issue of what should be done with illegal immigrants who are criminals is, again, hugely popular with the American people to deport them. And my question would be, I'm not an American, but I have a home there. I've been coming to America for a long time. If I was to break the law as a non-American, I'd be straight on a plane out of there with my visa revoked, right? I mean, it's not difficult. Why should the same logic not apply to illegal immigrants who are criminals?
If they are criminals, then they should be. Look, I'm not here to defend somebody who's done something wrong, who wants the privilege of being in the country. If they've done something, if they've committed criminal activity, then of course I'm for that as well. My issue, which Anna alluded to, is the fact that folks who are not criminals are getting swept up because we've completely abdicated the whole concept of due process in all of this. And so I think that that's still important. I think that, look, it used to be a Republican refrain that we're a country of laws, and so we can't just suspend them when it's inconvenient for us to do so.
I feel like there are a lot of elected Democrats or people in the mainstream media a little afraid to call out and fully criticize this unlawful and just disgusting mass deportation plan because they're worried that they get the blowback that comes with supposedly opposing these deportations, opposing a secure border, as MAGA likes to frame it. But that's not the case. Deporting without due process lawful permanent residents of the United States does not keep anyone safe. Actually, it puts all of us in more danger. That is what is at the heart of this. No one is going to say that we do not want people who have broken the law, criminals who are unlawfully in this country, people who are breaking the law, committing crimes, those people to be deported. No one's saying that. But there is a process. I thought this was the law and order party. Do we not care about that anymore? Or no, of course we don't. We never would. It is just all hypocrisy and idiocy. And speaking of the idiocy, Brian did not stop with just Hegseth, just with Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. He also went on to talk about something that we haven't covered in a couple of days, which seems crazy. And that's Stooge, because they're back in the spotlight, being the worst. Brian called it out right here.
Well, look, I would say the easy analysis of this is to say that they're incompetent. And I do think that they're incompetent to a degree. But I also think that in large part, this is what they want to do.
Elon Musk isn't incompetent, is he? I mean, let's be clear. He's one of the most brilliant minds in America.
Which brings me to my second point, is in large part, this is what they want to do. I mean, they'll trot out their talking points, and Benny brought out one of these things that, they're looking to just get the debt under control. They're adding money to the deficit, which is going to explode the debt even further. And so like this notion that we're just getting our spending under control, they needed to try to cut a little bit so that they can, including Medicaid and food stamps, $880 billion in energy and commerce, which will cut Medicaid, $230 billion in the Agriculture Committee, which will cut food stamps, to try and offset just a fraction of what they're going to add by virtue of $4.5 trillion for a tax cut that's overwhelmingly going to favor millionaires and billionaires. So we can say that they're incompetent for some of the egregious things that they're doing, but in large part, they're doing exactly what they want to do. They're not focused on the debt. They're not focused on trying to help people or make sure that they have adequate health care or grow, add jobs or whatever it is. They are doing what they need to do for the people that they're looking to help. And that is overwhelmingly people who are exactly like Elon Musk. And by the way, Piers, I would take issue with how you framed Elon, because he's not doing this as some benevolent patriotic figure.
Well, he's not being paid.
He was under investigation by nearly every single agency that he and Donald Trump have gutted, whether through gutting the agency itself or firing the inspectors general. Department of Labor, NLRB, USAID, CFPB, EPA. And so this isn't some indication of like benevolence by this patriotic figure.
Hang on.
He's deriving
being investigated or even sued. That's perfectly reasonable, normal business practice. It's whether those investigations or lawsuits lead to anything being actively overturned or then being punished for it. Trump is already on the record as saying, look, I will accept the ruling of judges on these things if we get challenged, but I'm not going to be blasted off my mission statement I made as a candidate. Many people would say, and I think there's merit to this, Trump is doing exactly what he said he'd do. And you might quibble whether they're going to reduce the debt or not. You can't tell after 10 weeks whether an administration can reduce the debt. You can after 2 years, and if they haven't reduced the debt after 2 years, then they're going to get a shellacking in the midterms and probably get a shellacking in the next general election. But I do think trying to assess whether what they're doing at the moment can reduce the debt is a bit preposterous after only, 10 weeks?
Well, it's not preposterous if you have the CBO score that shows exactly how much is going to be added to the debt. And so again, if you're passing it, I mean, it's just math, right? If you're cutting programs that don't amount to as much as you're adding by virtue of these tax cuts, then you are going to add to the deficit, and that's going to balloon the debt, which is to say nothing, by the way, of the amount of federal revenues that are shrinking by virtue of the fact that the economy is doing poorly right now.
Elon Musk is not a super genius. Can we stop with this? Can we stop with the narrative that he's operating on some other level? He sees the chessboard. No, he is constantly screwing up, constantly making mistakes. His Doge bags do not know what they're doing. I'm tired of this narrative. Thank God Brian was there to call it out. He's just the best. Thank you, Brian. I just got to be serious. He has built this space for years now, and independent media on YouTube, especially in progressive, liberal, left-leaning spaces, really can only thrive because of David Pakman and Brian Tyler Cohen. Those guys built this space. So much respect, admiration for them. You guys are the best. And, new upstart channels are pretty cool too. And so if you want to support one of those and me, maybe not as great as Brian, maybe one day we'll get there. Of course, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video, and if you stuck around at the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. Until next time, I'll see you soon.